China and its military have been all over the news recently. Should we be scared of their power, or is it all propaganda? We're going to discover that and more in this overlook of China's military. The Chinese military forces, known as the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, and its naval component, the PLAN, have always stressed numbers over quality. Beginning in 1949, the Chinese strategy of warfare, as articulated by their leader Mao Zedong, emphasized the superiority of man over weapons. Although weapons were certainly a significant component of winning any battle, Mao was quoted as saying, "They were not the decisive factor. It's people, not things, that are decisive." The contest of strength is not only a contest of military and economic power, but also a contest of human power and morale. To Mao, non-material factors like creativity, flexibility, and high morale were also critical determinants in warfare. Of course, he made those comments when China was still hobbled by an agrarian economy and long before they had the technology and resources to combat the United States and other Western powers on an equal material footing. In more recent times, China's made an effort to increase not just its overall numbers of advanced weapons, like tanks, missiles, ships, and aircraft, but to improve their quality as well. Nowhere is that effort for improvement more noticeable than in the People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN, which is undergoing a historic increase in shipbuilding and associated warfare capabilities. Rear Admiral Michael Studeman, commander of the Office of Naval Intelligence, was quoted in January 2023 as saying the PLAN is involved in a buildup in every warfare area, from its nascent Space Force and cyber warfare efforts to a fully capable blue water navy. "We'll see more of the Chinese Navy in the future," he said, as it operates farther from its home ports and its normal regional interests, specifically the South China Sea. China's expanding its logistics networks across the globe via port access agreements, formal basing arrangements, and takeovers of ports and nations that defaulted on infrastructure loans with China. But more importantly, the PLAN is increasing the size of its blue water fleet at a rapid pace. Here's what they have in service as of early 2023 with an outlook on what they're building for the future. Current strengths of the PLAN. The U.S. Defense Department is forecasting an increase in the PLAN from around 340 ships in 2023 to almost 500 by 2035. In 2021 alone, the PLAN launched a total of 21 ships, while the U.S. Navy commissioned just 7. The question is, does China have enough ships right now to confront the U.S. Navy and its allies in the Western Pacific and win, or would they be better off waiting a few years or even a decade in order to have a more overwhelming advantage? Let's take a look at what we know of current numbers of PLAN ships and assets. Aircraft carriers. 3. The pride of any modern navy and the ship around which most current fleets are built is the supercarrier. China's been a late comer to this party, but they're making up for it in a big way. They're currently operating 3 carriers, the 1990s-era Type 001 Liaoning, relegated to mostly a training role, the Type 002 Shandong, and the recently launched Type 003 Fujian. The Type 001 and 002 are almost identical and both include a ski jump launch ramp, which is replaced on the Type 003 with an electromagnetic catapult launcher. Types 1 and 2 are both in the 60 to 70,000 ton range, while Type 3 is expected to displace between 85,000 and 90,000 tons. These carriers are equipped mostly with the J-15 Flying Shark naval fighter, which we'll discuss later. The Type 1 and 2 can carry between 40 and 45 fighter aircraft and helicopters, while the larger Type 3 is expected to have a complement of up to 60 total aircraft. In comparison, the U.S. Ford-class carrier, the U.S. Navy's most modern carrier, has a complement of up to 85 aircraft and displaces around 100,000 tons. In 2021, analysts reported that the Type 3 will operate the Shenyang J-15B variant, a modernized version of the J-15 that'll feature catapult launch capability, modern 5th-generation avionics, active electronically scanned array radar, new airframes, stealth coatings, and new engines with possible thrust vectoring capability. This aircraft is expected to be a stopgap aircraft until the scheduled PLAN stealth carrier fighter is developed and produced. More on that later as well. There's much discussion about a proposed 4th PLAN aircraft carrier currently under development and known only as the Type 04. Unfortunately, not many concrete details are known about this ship. Its debut will not be seen until 2024 at the earliest and possibly not till 2025. It's rumored to have an electromagnetic launch capability like the U.S. Navy Ford-class carriers and might be nuclear-powered as well, though again, nothing's been confirmed. It's interesting to note that the early models and paintings of the Type 004 bear an ID number of 20, while Type 003, just entering service, bears the ID number of 18. This suggests there might be another carrier in the planning stages, probably a sister ship to the Type 003, which could presumably bear the ID number 19. Landing helicopter docks. 3. One of the areas the Chinese government has addressed as a pressing issue is the PLAN's ability to land troops during an amphibious operation, such as the possible invasion of Taiwan. They have therefore placed a strong emphasis on modernizing and increasing the size of their amphibious assault forces. The largest of these vessels are currently the 3 Type 075 landing helicopter docks, or LHD, very large ships at between 30,000 and 40,000 tons. Their size allows them to operate almost as escort carriers, with a flight deck that allows for 7 takeoff and landing spots, with 2 elevators for moving helicopters from below deck. They can carry 3 Type 726 Yuyi-class LCAC hovercraft, which can be launched from a floatable well dock. The LHDs also carry up to 60 armored fighting vehicles and between 700 and 800 troops. These LHDs are modern ships built since 2018, with an estimated 8 more expected to be completed in the next 10 years. Their one limiting factor is that as of 2023, China does not operate a vertical takeoff and landing, or VTOL, aircraft like the US's F-35B, so the LHDs are limited to rotary aircraft only. Amphibious transport docks. 8. While the LHDs are expected to be the backbone of any future amphibious attack, the 8 Type 071 Amphibious Transport Docks, or ATDs, will no doubt be used as well. Smaller than the LHDs, but still impressive at 25,000 tons displacement, these ships don't have a flight deck, but they do have a stern landing deck for 2 Z-8 transport helicopters and room on board for up to 4 more. The ATDs also have a floatable well deck for up to 4 Type 726 hovercraft and can carry the same number of armored vehicles, up to 60, and more troops, up to 800, than the LHDs. The Type 71 can also carry landing craft on port and starboard davits. And while both the Type 75 and Type 71 ships have limited SAM launchers for self-defense, they'll need protection from other ships in any fleet action where an amphibious operation is expected to be opposed. Landing ship tanks. 36. Weighing in at around 4,000 tons, the PLAN also operates some 36 medium-sized landing ship tanks. Each of these can carry up to 250 troops and between 10 to 12 combat vehicles, which can be offloaded through their bow doors or via a stern ramp. Every modern carrier-based fleet needs protection from missiles and attacking aircraft. This role in modern fleets is served by the more modern multi-role missile-carrying destroyers. In the PLAN, there are generally 3 levels of capability for their destroyer fleet. Type 055 Renhai class ships. 8. The best of their destroyers are the 8 commissioned Type 055 Renhai class ships that displace about 13,000 tons. Very large for a destroyer and almost the size of a World War II heavy cruiser. In comparison, Germany's World War II heavy cruiser, the Admiral Hipper, was only slightly larger at 14,000 tons displacement. The Type 55 is inherently stealthy and boasts a massive complement of 112 vertical launch systems, or VLS, that can handle HHQ-9 surface-to-air missiles with a range of between 120 and 250 kilometers, YJ-18 anti-ship missiles with a range of 220 to 540 kilometers, YJ-21 anti-ship missiles, a reported 1,500-kilometer range, CJ-10 land attack missiles over 1,500 kilometers of range, and various missile-launched anti-submarine torpedoes. These destroyers are some of the best in the world, and their striking power is unmatched by any other ship of its size. The Zumwalt-class destroyers, while even larger than the Type 55s, displacing 15,900 tons, only carry 80 VLRS tubes. Another 12 to 15 Type 55s are in various stages of planning or building, with 1 or 2 new ships expected to be launched each of the next 5 or 6 years. It's noteworthy that the PLAN was able to launch all 8 of their current Type 55s in only 3 years, from 2017 to 2020. As an aside, the U.S. classifies these ships as cruisers, which are defined by the U.S. Navy as large multi-mission surface combatants with flag facilities. This suggests the U.S. expects the Type 55 to fulfill a similar role as the Ticonderoga-class cruiser. Type 052D, Luoyang 3 class, 26. Almost as capable are the smaller 26 vessels of the Type 52D Luoyang 3 class. With its 7,500-ton displacement, it is a larger variant of the Type 52C. The Type 52D was China's first dedicated multi-role destroyer, as it oversaw the switch from swing-arm launchers to the vertical launch tube array. The Type 52D has a more modest 64 tubes. The Type 52D also employs the same flat-paneled active electronically scanned array radar that the Type 55 uses. Unlike the Type 55s, though, their missile complement includes the earlier version of the HHQ-9 air defense missile with a shorter 120-kilometer range, the earlier YJ-18 anti-ship missile with a 220-kilometer range, and the CY-5 anti-submarine missiles. Despite being based on earlier designs and smaller than the Type 55s, these ships are still quite modern and more capable of handling air and missile defense over quite a large area. Another 6 are being built, though from that point on it's expected that the Type 55 will do the heavy lifting when it comes to air defense for the PLAN. Type 052C Luoyang 2 class. 6. The second level of battle-worthy destroyers would include the 6 Type 052C Luoyang 2 class destroyers, launched in 2004 and 2006, and the 2 Type 51C Luzhou class ships launched beginning in 2006. The Type 52C, displacing 7,000 tons, was the first PLAN vessel that included both a fixed active electronically scanned array radar as well as vertically launched surface-to-air missiles, making it the first Chinese warship with area-wide air defense capability. Its launch system includes a standard complement of 48 HHQ-9 surface-to-air missiles with a range of 120 kilometers that are cold-launched from 8 revolver-type vertical launchers with 6 missiles per launcher, along with 8 tube-launched YJ-62 anti-ship cruise missiles with a range of 280 kilometers. Because of this earlier launch system, these ships could be overwhelmed by a mass attack of modern hypersonic or sea-skimming missiles. No additional Type 55C or 51C destroyers are currently being built. Type 51C Luzhou class. 2. The 2 Type 51C destroyers at 7,100 tons lack the stealthier radar cross-section found on the newer Chinese warships and possess a less advanced steam turbine propulsion compared to the gas turbine propulsion present in all newer Chinese destroyers. The Type 51C was considered a temporary answer for a long-range area air defense platform that blended the proven hull design of the Type 51 with the existing SAM systems that were deemed capable for fleet defense. Production of this class ended once the more advanced Type 52C destroyers became available. Type 52B Luoyang 1 class. 2. Russian-built Sovremeny class. 4. Type 51B Luhai class. 1. Type 52 Luhu class. 2. The least battle-worthy of the PLAN destroyers includes the last remaining commissioned vessels in several classes: 2 Type 52B Luoyang 1 class, 4 Russian-built Sovremeny class, 1 Type 51B Luhai class, and 2 Type 52 Luhu class. These are expected to either be relegated to China's equivalent of the Coast Guard or mothballed as more of the larger Type 55s come online. Frigates. 47. Frigates are considered escort vessels that are smaller than the current PLAN destroyer class of ships. These include several varieties: the 32 Type 54A Zhengkai 2 class at 3,960 tons displacement, the 2 Type 54 Zhengkai 1 vessels, 3,900 tons displacement, the 10 Type 53H3 Zhengwai 2, 2,200 tons displacement, and the 3 Type 53 Zhenghu class, 2,000 tons displacement. Type 54A Zhengkai 2 class. 32. Of these, the Type 54As are the most lethal, with a 32-cell VLS system armed with HQ-16 missiles with a 40-kilometer range. While not armed with the longer-range SAMs that larger ships have, they can supplement the overall air defense system, while also being useful submarine hunters with their Type 87 anti-submarine rocket launcher with 36 rockets carried, and its 3 U-8 ASW torpedo launchers. Their SAM missiles, however, are really only useful for self-defense, not as part of an area air defense system, and their sonars are relatively short-ranged. There are current plans to build as many as 30 more of these relatively inexpensive Type 54s, though, through 2035. Type 54 Zhengkai 1 class. 2. The Type 54 Zhengkai 1 class was designed in the 1990s and built into 2005. Though older, they do include features like stealthy hull designs and the YJ-83 sea-skimming anti-ship missiles with a 180-kilometer range, though they're launched in an 8-cell launcher with 16 additional missiles stored in their automatic loaders. Type 53H3 Zhengwai 2. 10. The Type 53 Zhenghu class. 3. The Type 53 Zhenghu class were also armed with the YJ-83 missile in 2 4-cell launchers, along with the HQ-61 surface-to-air missiles with an 18-kilometer range. These and the Type 54 have already seen many of their sister ships transferred to China's Coast Guard or sold overseas, and these will likely accompany them in due time. Corvettes. 72. The smallest of the PLAN's intended blue ocean fleet are the corvettes. Type 56A. 50. 50 of these are the Type 56A guided missile corvettes with 1,500 tons displacement, which began production in 2013 and are of a relatively new design and are equipped with both an active sonar and a towed array sonar, which is uncommon for ships this small. They incorporate modest stealth superstructures and are armed with 4 YJ-83 anti-ship missiles and 2 triple-tube 324mm torpedo launchers, which might carry U-7 light ASWs. Type 56 class. 22. The Type 56A class are supported by 22 earlier Type 56 class corvettes. These ships are less useful to the Blue Water Fleet due to more limited fuel and ammunition supplies, but they are equipped with both a hull-mounted sonar and a single ASW helicopter. Both types are expected to stay mostly close to shore and provide coastal and port security and defense, and might also wind up in the Chinese Coast Guard along with the aforementioned frigates. Missile boats 106. The smallest ships of the PLAN that'll still pack an offensive punch are the missile boats, small and fast, though not very survivable in dedicated shooting wars. They're expected to operate much like the famous PT boats of World War II. Get in, fire their armament, and then get away even faster. Type 22, 82. Though small in size at 224 tons, the 82 Type 22 fast missile boats are an ingenious solution that the PLAN began to deploy in 2004. These craft are designed to patrol China's coastal areas and operate within its littoral zone. However, as each of the Type 22s is armed with 8 YJ-83 anti-ship missiles, it's speculated by some observers that a large number of the craft firing in salvos could potentially overwhelm an enemy fleet, including an aircraft carrier battle group. The design is based on an Australian catamaran craft that provides a more stable launch platform than other ships of its size, especially in the high seas. All 82 of these ships were launched between 2004 and 2011, though no additional ships of this class are pending. Type 37-2, 6. The PLAN also operates 6 Type 37-2 corvettes, weighing in at about 420 tons. These anti-submarine shallow water patrol craft were built between 1964 and 1982, so they're far from state-of-the-art. As newer models of corvettes have entered service, these ships have been phased out or put into storage. Type 37IG, 18. That's much of the same fate as the 18 Type 37 IG corvettes, built between 91 and 1999. The IG is an anti-ship version of the Type 37 and are equipped with a small complement of 4 C-801, 802, 803 anti-ship missiles, effectively the same missile as the YJ-83, with a range of about 120 kilometers. Rounding out their surface fleet, the PLAN also have 26 smaller sub-chasers and 36 minesweepers. These won't be part of any nominal Blue Water Fleet unless they're transitioning to protect some other more distant coastal or port areas. Type 94 Jin-class ballistic missile submarines, 7. The exact number of active submarines in the PLAN is a state secret, so the numbers listed here are best estimates by various analysts and Western sources. The most dangerous are the PLAN 7 Jin-class ballistic missile submarines, SSBNs. These boats were considered by the US DoD as China's first credible seaborne nuclear deterrent. Their weapon systems originally carried 12 single-warhead JL-2 SLBMs with a 7,200-kilometer range. These have mostly been replaced by the JL-3 SLBMs with a range of over 10,000 kilometers, which gives the Jin the ability to reach the continental US. The PLAN has boasted through numerous improvements that the boats are now currently as quiet as the US's improved Los Angeles class. But in 2009, the US Navy's Office of Naval Intelligence reported that the Shanks were about as noisy as the Russian Victor III class submarine, which entered service in 1979. 6 of these have been built, and another 2 upgraded models are still being built. The Type 94 succeeded the Type 92's SSBNs and will in turn be replaced by the Type 96 sub, which is under development and expected to come online starting in the mid-2020s. Type 93 Shang-class nuclear-powered attack submarines, 6. The PLAN also operates 6 Shang-class nuclear-powered attack submarines. As with the Type 94, the PLAN believes they're as quiet as some of the best US Navy attack ships, though ONI reports they're about as noisy as late 70s Russian-era ships. This will hinder them in attacking US assets, which might not be as much of a problem when encountering ships from India and maybe Japan. They're armed with 6 torpedo tubes and can launch a range of weapons, including the U-3, the first indigenous Chinese torpedo with a range of 13.3 kilometers, the U-4 with a 15-kilometer range, and the U-6 torpedoes with a 46-kilometer range, as well as the YJ-82 anti-ship cruise missiles with less than a 42-kilometer range. Type 39A, also called the Type 41 Yuan class, 17. China possesses 17 Yuan-class diesel-electric attack subs, SSKs. These are the plan's first air-independent propulsion or AIP-powered subs, making them some of the quietest diesel-electric subs in any Navy. While at first considered by the US Navy as an anti-ship cruise missile platform capable of remaining submerged for lengthy periods of time in difficult-to-acquire coastal areas, it's since been expected to take on the role of a traditional blue water attack submarine. Kilo class, 10. China originally purchased 12 Russian-origin Kilo-class submarines, 2 Project 877 vessels, 2 Project 636 vessels, and 8 Project 636M vessels. In late 2021, the PLAN retired the 2 Project 877 vessels, leaving 10 Russian-origin Kilo-class subs in service. Type 39 Song-class, 13. China possesses 13 Song-class diesel-electric attack submarines. Not as quiet nor as fast as their upgraded Type 39A or Type 41 cousins, these are considered more coastal protection and less useful for long-term employments. Type 35 Ming-class, 22. China possesses 22 Ming-class diesel-electric attack submarines. While the early models, Type 35s, were deemed acceptable when they were first designed in the early 1980s, over the decades since their inception, many improvements were deemed necessary. Many variants have been developed since then, such as the Type 35A with 6 built, the Type 35G with 12 built, and the Type 35B with 4 built. All Ming-class submarines possess 533mm torpedo tubes, and Type 35Bs are capable of firing cruise missiles from their torpedo tubes. Not if the PLAN will attack, but when? President Xi has already stated he wants the Chinese military to be prepared to retake Taiwan by force no later than 2027, which just so happens to coincide with the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Liberation Army. By that time, it'll have added hundreds of new missiles, a dozen more advanced destroyers, and a couple more nuclear attack subs, and might even have come close to addressing its carrier aviation woes. She's also called for the military to achieve world-class status by 2049, suggesting the ability to dominate the Western Pacific despite any efforts by the US Navy and its allies Japan, Australia, and possibly India. It's clear China's already preparing for an invasion of Taiwan, as its most recent exercise in April 2023, codenamed Joint Sword, demonstrated. The 3-day event included 80 fixed-wing and 40 rotary craft helicopter sorties from the Type 2 Shandong carrier, as well as simulated attack drills using aircraft armed with live weapons. The exercise was a coordinated effort designed for a large-scale attack on Taiwan. Though the effort was somewhat limited in scope, the PLAN only deployed 1 carrier, the Shandong, 11 other warships, and 91 aircraft, with the majority of the aircraft being land-based types. These included Su-30 fighters and H-6 bombers, as well as carrier-based J-11s and J-15s. Official Chinese outlets admitted the aircraft involved carried live ammunition and practiced multiple waves of simulated strikes on important targets, both on the island of Taiwan as well as supposed naval threats. Following the conclusion of the 3-day operation, the PLA's Eastern Theater Command said in a statement, "The troops in the theater are ready to fight all the time and can fight at any time, resolutely crushing any form of Taiwan independence, separatism, and foreign interference." While this is not the largest naval exercise that the PLAN has carried out, those that followed the Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in August 2022 included 13 warships and 68 planes, as well as live-fire ballistic missile launches. It's the first where the PLAN simulated a blockade of the entire island, and the first that involved one of its 2 frontline carriers. Taiwan's radar showed 4 J-15 fighter jets to the island's east, demonstrating that the PLAN is for the first time simulating attacking from the east, rather than only from the west where China's mainland lies. All its previous military exercises involved only a show of force in the western Strait of Taiwan. Analysts also said it was likely the J-15 fighters had come from the Shandong aircraft carrier, one of the 2 frontline carriers China is currently operating, while their 3rd carrier, the recently launched Type 003, named the Fujian, undergoes sea trials. During the operation, the Shandong was deployed in the western Pacific Ocean, roughly 200 miles southeast of Taiwan. It should be noted that through the years, other countries have launched invasions under the guise of exercises and drills, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's very likely any real invasion of Taiwan may begin using the same ruse. One element suggesting a sooner rather than later war might be the drawdown of US and other Western countries' stockpiles of missiles, ammunition, and artillery, which has resulted from them supplying these resources to Ukraine. Estimates are that Ukraine is burning through an estimated 6,000 artillery shells per day. The stockpiles the West and the US have relied on to keep Ukraine supplied can't be replaced as quickly as they're being expended. The return of stockpiles to pre-invasion levels could take years to accomplish. A recent war simulation between the US and China over the island of Taiwan, run by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, concluded the US could run out of some munitions in as little as a week. Current efforts are being made to strengthen supply chains and make it easier for private US companies to ramp up production in the event of a war, but these changes could also take years to implement. These problems are particularly concerning since the rate at which China has been acquiring high-end weapon systems and equipment is 5 to 6 times faster than the US, according to some US government estimates. Overall, the Pentagon hopes to increase artillery ammunition production 5-fold in the next 2 years, the largest production increase since the mid-1950s and the Korean War. This would include both rockets and conventional shells, and it'd be understandable if China also had reached the same conclusion and decides to take on the US armed forces before they address these shortcomings and adapt overall production infrastructure to correct the shortfalls. The US has made it clear that its military is anticipating and prepping for a future conflict centered around defeating or at least containing Chinese military aggression. Not only is the US working to increase the number of bases it has access to in the Western Pacific, it's also begun to change its force structure to better fit the amphibious warfare expected in such a scenario. For example, the US Marine Corps is undergoing a once-in-a-generation restructuring of their forces, ditching heavy equipment like tanks in favor of more mobile strike forces that can be deployed from littoral combat ships and helicopter assets. China is undoubtedly aware of this and has to gauge whether they should strike before the US fully implements this changeover in planning, logistics, and tactics dubbed Force Design 2030. Then there are the estimates that China's population is shrinking, an unsettling proposition that the country has tried to conceal. For the first time since the famines of Mao's Great Leap Forward in 1961, China's population dropped in 2022, losing an officially estimated 850,000 people from its count, though the actual number might be even higher than the Chinese government is willing to admit. Not only is China's population dropping, but their population pyramid is upside down. China is failing to replace its aging population with sufficient numbers of younger men and women that are needed both in working roles as well as the military. The longer China waits, the smaller its manpower pool from which it draws on prospective soldiers, sailors, and pilots will be. Besides the focus on Taiwan, there are other flashpoints across the Western Pacific, such as the areas of the South China Sea, that China, through building bases on atolls and reefs, claims as their sovereign territory. While their right to own such areas has been denied by the United Nations, China holds firm to their perceived right and continues to engage in heated exchanges whenever the US or another regional power attempts to sail through such areas. The most recent near altercation came in April 2023, when the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer USS Milius performed a freedom of navigation operation, FONOP, in the South China Sea near the Spratly Islands area called Mischief Reef, an aptly named site for an accidental launch of a world war if there ever was one. Events like Taiwan invasion exercises and the ongoing incidents over the contested portions of the South China Sea support the concern that an unplanned incident could launch an unexpected conflict at any moment. Some Chinese leaders might believe they'd be better off striking sooner than later, even if the alternative would mean the PLAN would be larger and more robust just a few years from now. But that last point might be the most compelling reason why China might just wait before it launches an overt attack. Why would they wait? Many elements of the PLAN's modernization won't come online until 5 to 10 years from now, including its most advanced aircraft carrier, the Type 004, which remains a mystery for the most part. It's not clear what stage of development it's in. It's not even clear whether it'll make use of advanced nuclear propulsion systems like the 11 current US carriers. According to many observers, China's naval nuclear reactor technology is not advanced enough to support a warship the size of the Type 004. This matters a great deal because nuclear propulsion would allow the ship to sail farther without refueling, only needing to be resupplied with provisions for the crew as well as ammunition and other expendables for its combat assets. A nuclear propulsion unit would also provide more energy to run the advanced electromagnetic launch systems and advanced Aegis-type radar and other sensor suites, as well as future weapon add-ons like railguns and directed energy weapons. It should be noted that the USS Gerald Ford is designed around not just one but two powerful nuclear propulsion systems, as will all future Ford-class supercarriers. This provides an excess of power for future improvements during an anticipated 50-year lifespan for the Ford-class carriers, and allows for several refits and upgrades. Some observers have noted that the current ID number attached to the Type 004 is 20, while the Type 003 is 18. That gap has led to speculation that China is planning a second Type 003 carrier, a sister ship to the Shandong, which could carry the ID-19 and which would be cheaper and quicker to build than the groundbreaking Type 4. This has led to estimates that the PLAN could field 5 modern aircraft carriers by 2030, including the Type 004 and the Type 003 sister ship, as well as a total of 10 ballistic missile subs, an increase over its current 6. But by 2030, the U.S. should have an additional 2 Ford-class carriers as well, each of which are larger than the planned Type 004 carrier at 80,000 tons versus the Ford-class carrier's 100,000 tons. The Ford-class carriers will also field up to 85 aircraft, while the Type 004s will possibly carry 45 to 60 aircraft. Another area where the PLAN lags behind the U.S. is in trained carrier pilots. It's no secret the Chinese Navy has had trouble fielding an adequate carrier aircraft trainer. Its current option, the JL-9G, a single-engine twin-seat aircraft first deployed in 2011, is based on a design that's too weak to take the continued pounding that carrier landings place on an aircraft's body, so it's been limited to only simulated carrier landings and takeoffs on ground-based mock-ups. And as any carrier pilot will tell you, the most difficult part of being a carrier-based pilot is trying to land on an airplane on a short diagonal runway of a ship that's moving away from you, often at night and sometimes in rough seas. Ground-based mock-ups would not sufficiently be an accurate simulation for the intensity and difficulty of a true carrier landing. There are concurrent problems with its standard carrier fighter, the J-15 Flying Shark, which was mocked by Russia as a poorly back-engineered version of a 2001 Su-33 prototype, the T-10K3, which they had bought from Ukraine. At a reported 17.5 tons, the J-15 is now thought to be the world's heaviest carrier-borne fighter. In comparison, the U.S. Navy's F/A-18 weighs only 14.5 tons, and the F-35C Lightning II is only slightly more at 14.6 tons. The J-15 suffers from either having to carry less than optimal fuel, giving it less range, or less armament, giving it less lethality, if it intends to take off from the two Type 1 and Type 2 ski jump-equipped carriers. With a pair of Chinese-designed engines that fail to produce adequate thrust-to-weight ratios, its underwhelming performance has earned it the nickname of the flopping fish by the normally reserved Chinese press. On the plus side, China's begun deployment of the Chengdu J-20 stealth fighter, somewhat comparable to the U.S.'s F-22 stealth fighter, and have produced and put into service around 200 of them. But this aircraft cannot be adapted to carriers, much like the F-22, and remains a standard land-based air superiority fighter, which limits their range and thus their support of the PLAN. China is, however, focused on creating a new carrier-launched stealth fighter, the FC-31 Gyrfalcon, also known as the J-31, a mid-sized twin-jet 5th-generation fighter aircraft currently in its design and development stages. And though a prototype was spotted going through testing as early as July 2022, a completed and fully functional aircraft might not be deployed until sometime after 2025. No country is standing still. No military force exists in a vacuum. The strength of China's PLAN can only be measured against its likely opponents, and it's clear the longer China waits, the more of its military assets will be coming online. Yet, as they wait to increase their naval strength, the countries surrounding them are doing the same. Their current chief rival, the U.S. Navy, has plans to expand their 300-ship fleet to a massive 500-ship fleet by 2045. While the PLAN is expected to launch more larger ships, the U.S. is doing the opposite, focusing on many smaller ships to spread out its attack posture across a wider number of platforms. Then, of course, there is Taiwan. They've increased their military spending by 14% to a record $19 billion for the fiscal year 2023. Despite such massive increases, they've also asked the United States for an additional $19 billion in military aid, which Congress previously approved in November 2022, though various delays have prevented the aid from reaching Taiwan just yet. Not far behind is Japan, who have just completed 2 new 27,000-ton Izumo-class carriers. They can accommodate up to 7 SH-60K ASW helicopters and 7 MCM-100 mine countermeasure helicopters, along with 400 troops. They're also expected to accommodate both the F-35B, a VSTOL version of the F-35, along with US MV-22 Ospreys for an anticipated future amphibious counterstrike mission. In addition to Japan's first carrier since World War II, their Navy is also committed to building 2 Aegis-equipped destroyers of around 20,000 tons, making them larger than the U.S.'s 15,900-ton Zumwalt destroyers. These are clearly cruisers in everything but name. China has nothing of a comparable size in the PLAN, nor in development. Japan also operates the Maya-class destroyers with a more normal displacement of 8,200 tons, in coordination with 2 older Atago-class and 4 Kong-class destroyers. Just to the south, a 3-way deal is already underway between Australia, the United States, and Great Britain, where Australia will allow the basing of a small number of US and UK nuclear submarines in the port city of Perth in Western Australia, beginning in 2027. Following this move, the Australian government will purchase 3 US-made Virginia-class nuclear cruise missile fast attack subs in the early 2030s. From that point on, Australia and the UK will coordinate in designing and building an all-new, jointly designed fast-attack nuclear submarine currently identified as the SSN-AUKUS, using technology from all three countries. India has also added a new carrier to its fleet, the 40,000-ton Vikrant, the first and certainly not the last wholly indigenous carrier designed and built in India. The ship can carry up to 26 fighters like the MiG-29K or the Rafale M, along with 4 helicopters like the Ka-31. There are rumors that India wishes to build a sister ship to the Vikrant, but nothing has yet been confirmed. As an addendum, India has also begun to replace China as one of the go-to sources of high-tech manufacturing. Apple Inc. recently announced that India has assembled more than $7 billion worth of iPhones in the fiscal year ending 2022, signaling Apple and other high-tech companies' moves beyond China. This decision to seek new manufacturing partners other than China is one that will only increase, not decrease, in the coming years. These partnerships will help India to expand its homegrown manufacturing base, draining both capital and brain power from China's tech sector. While China is pouring money and resources into modernizing the PLAN, its efforts have been matched by other nations around the region who feel threatened by China's bellicose nature toward Taiwan, as well as its attempts to grab 90% of the South China Sea for itself. At some point, China will have to decide if a continued build-up in parallel with its neighbors is the best solution to dominate the world's ocean, or if they'll decide to go all in with what they have. One thing is certain, the US and its allies must respect the striking power of China's current fleet while awaiting a second Pearl Harbor-like strike. Hopefully this time the US Navy will heed the warnings of the massive buildup by a potential Pacific opponent. Now watch India versus China, who would win, Army-military comparison, or check out China's plan to take over the world.